Disclaimer: this story explores emotionally mature themes and difficult family dynamics. It does not contain any explicit or graphic material. Viewer discretion is advised. I never expected the quiet return to my uncle's ranch to dig up anything more than some awkward family memories and maybe the scent of old hay. But within just a few hours of arriving, I realized I'd stepped into something I couldn't walk away from, something that twisted my sense of loyalty, and tested my patience, my values, and maybe even my sanity. It started with a phone call. My Uncle Greg, my dad's older brother, had never been one to ask for help. A proud, broad-shouldered man in his early 50s, he spent most of his life tending to the family ranch just outside of Helena, Montana. After my dad passed away 2 years ago, Greg sort of fell off the map. No calls. No texts. Just silence. So when he called out of the blue last week asking me, begging me, to come help him with something urgent on the property, I felt obligated. Not out of love. Out of blood. I pulled into the gravel driveway around noon. The place looked faded. The white paint on the barn was peeling, fences were half collapsed, and weeds had begun their quiet conquest of the front pasture. The only thing that looked alive was her, Stormy. Stormy was a beautiful, black Arabian mare with a silver-white streak in her mane that shimmered like frost in the sunlight. She stood still behind the fence, watching me with eyes that felt a little too knowing. I remembered her from childhood visits. Greg always said she was smarter than most people. Inside the house, Greg looked worse than I expected, scruffy, sunburned, and wiry. His clothes hung looser than I remembered. He hugged me tightly, with a kind of desperation I hadn't felt from him before. "You came." "Thank you," he said. "What's going on, Greg?" I asked. He motioned for me to sit and poured me a cup of black coffee that tasted like ashes. "It's Stormy. I need your help training her." "Training her?" "Greg, you've been working with horses since before I was born. Why do you need me?" "It's not just about the training," he said, avoiding my eyes. "It's what she's been doing. She's acting strange. Aggressive 1 minute, eerily calm the next. Won't let me near her anymore. But when she saw you today, she didn't bolt." "That's something." I shrugged, still unsure where any of this was going. "Okay, so you want me to work with her?" Greg leaned forward, his voice low and flat. "I need you to do exactly what I say with her. Out back. Alone." His tone sent a small chill down my spine. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "You'll see," he said, standing. "It has to happen today. Before sunset." The sun outside was already sinking lower in the sky, casting long golden fingers across the dry grass. I stood at the back fence, watching Stormy as she paced slowly, like she was waiting. Her ears twitched when she saw me again. And then, she walked to the far corner and stopped, staring toward the woods behind the property. Like she was pointing at something. I turned back to look for Greg, but he was gone. And that's when I noticed it, a small wooden box half buried under a pile of feed sacks by the barn wall. Carved into the lid were initials I didn't recognize. I bent down, dusted it off, and that's when I heard the sound behind me, the click of the fence gate unlatching on its own. Greg didn't come back out of the house, and the silence that followed his disappearance pressed in like a weight. I stood there, holding that old wooden box, not sure if opening it would give me answers, or more questions. My hands hesitated on the latch. Something about it felt personal, even sacred, like it belonged to a different time. A different Greg. Growing up, I used to idolize him. He was the cool uncle, the one who taught me how to ride, how to tell a lie with a straight face, and how to spot a storm before it rolled over the hills. But after Dad died, that connection frayed. He never reached out. Neither did I. Now here we were, alone on the same property where I learned to hold a lasso, with a horse acting like she knew something I didn't and an uncle who suddenly felt like a stranger. My gut told me this wasn't just about training Stormy. Something else was going on, something Greg hadn't said out loud yet. I opened the box. Inside was a bundle of old Polaroids, some faded letters, and a key. The photos showed Stormy as a filly, but in one picture, there was another man standing beside Greg, a man who looked just like my father. Younger. Healthier. They were smiling. Behind them was the same fenced field I was standing in now. I didn't even hear Stormy approach until her breath was warm against my shoulder. I turned slowly. She wasn't looking at me, she was staring at the barn. Her ears twitched toward it like a warning. And then I heard it too. A creaking sound from inside. Not wood. Not wind. Footsteps. I turned, scanning for Greg, but the house was still dark. My heartbeat picked up as I slowly stepped toward the barn door, the old key trembling in my hand. Whatever Greg needed help with, it wasn't just a horse problem. The barn door creaked louder as I approached, the old key sweaty in my grip. Stormy didn't follow. She just stood rooted to the dirt, ears pinned back, her breath quick and shallow. It was like she knew something I didn't, or had seen something I wasn't ready to. I unlocked the barn and stepped inside. Dust danced in the sunlight streaming through the cracks in the wood. Everything looked untouched, abandoned even, except for the far stall. It was barricaded from the outside with rusted chains and planks. Someone had gone out of their way to keep whatever was inside from getting out. That's when I saw it, another photograph, pinned to the wall. My dad again. But this time, he was alone, and bleeding. His shirt was torn, and his eyes looked haunted, like he'd just seen the end of something. Behind me, the barn door slammed shut. I spun around, heart hammering, but no one was there. Not Greg. Not Stormy. Just silence again, deafening, absolute. I pushed the door open and stepped back into the light. And there he was. Greg stood by the fence, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said. "What happened to him?" I demanded, holding the photo up. Greg didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward Stormy, who had backed away and was now pacing the edge of the fence like she was trapped between instincts, flight or fight. "He broke the rules," Greg said quietly. "And you're starting to, too." "Rules?" I asked. "What rules? What the hell are you hiding?" He stared at me for a long time before finally saying, "You've already seen too much. Now you need to decide, finish what your father started, or walk away, before it takes you too." The barn groaned again behind me, like something inside was waking up. I stepped back from Greg, the photo trembling in my hand. The weight of his words sank in like stones in my gut. Finish what your father started. What did he mean? What had my dad done out here before he died? Greg walked toward the barn without looking at me. "You should have stayed away," he muttered. "But it's too late now. She chose you." "She?" I echoed. He nodded toward Stormy. "She doesn't let just anyone near that stall. She remembers him, remembers what happened the night he tried to end it." I looked back at the chained stall, heart pounding like a drumbeat. "And what?" Greg paused. His eyes were bloodshot, haunted. "This place isn't just land. It's a prison, for something old. Something your father and I locked away before you were even born. Stormy's the last one who knows how to keep it asleep." I shook my head. You're not making sense. You sound insane. That's what he said, Greg whispered. Right before the thing almost tore him apart. A sudden, thunderous crack exploded from inside the barn. The chains rattled violently on the stall door. The mare screamed, a sound like nothing I'd ever heard. Greg lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. You need to finish it. Use the key. But I yanked away from him. Finish what? The stall burst open with a deafening crash. Dust and splinters filled the air. Inside the shadows, something moved, too tall, too fast, and wrong in every way. Stormy reared back and bolted toward the far side of the fence, eyes wild. Greg turned to me, his face pale. If it gets out, it won't stop. Not this time. Something stepped out of the stall, only partly visible, like the air itself was bending around it. And it was coming straight for me. The thing stepped from the shadows of the stall, and for a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a creature, at least not in the way you'd imagine. It looked wrong. Its shape shimmered, bending the air around it like heat rising off asphalt. It had no real edges, no definite form. It wasn't what you saw, it was what you felt. And I felt, recognized. Greg grabbed my arm again. You need to run. But I didn't move. I couldn't. The thing was staring at me, into me. Somewhere deep in my chest, a memory stirred. Not mine. Someone else's. Greg shoved me toward the fence. Get out. I'll hold it back. Stormy was at the far end of the yard, stomping and crying out like she was trying to warn me. Greg ran toward the barn, yelling something in a language I didn't know. The thing responded, not with sound, but with a flicker, like a strobe light pulsing in the shadows. It darted forward, not running but gliding, its form distorting as it moved. Greg raised a rusted branding iron I hadn't seen before and plunged it into the thing's path. There was a flash, searing, blinding light, and the smell of ozone. The creature recoiled, shrieking inside my mind. Not out loud. Inside. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Then I saw it, on the floor where the thing had been standing, an outline. A burn mark, shaped like a man. Greg fell to his knees, breathing hard. You okay? I called out. He shook his head. You weren't supposed to see this, not this way. I stepped toward him cautiously. What is it? Greg wiped blood from his nose. Your father, he made a deal. We both did. What kind of deal? He looked up at me with eyes full of regret. To save your life. I froze. Greg continued. You were born with something inside you. Something dangerous. The doctors never knew what it was, but your body kept rejecting the world. Seizures. Fevers. You were dying. I remembered none of that. My childhood felt ordinary. But now, pieces started falling into place. Strange dreams. Blackouts. The feeling that something watched me when I was alone. Greg stood slowly. Stormy was never just a horse. She was the seal. Your father found her. Raised her. Trained her to contain it, you. My voice was barely audible. What do you mean, contain me? Greg didn't answer immediately. He stared at the burnt mark on the ground. We used her bond with you, before you could remember, to hold the thing inside you at bay. But it's waking up again. The more you remember, the less control Stormy has. That's why I needed you to come now. Before it was too late. My head spun. So this wasn't about training the horse. It was about me. Greg nodded. and you're stronger than I thought. It's responding to you. That means the seal is failing. I looked toward Stormy. She was staring at me now, not with fear, but with a kind of sadness. Like she knew this was the last time she'd be able to protect me. And that's when the second stall door creaked open. There was another one. From the shadows stepped a second presence, this one more stable, more defined. Human-shaped, but not human. As it moved forward, Greg dropped the iron. His lips trembled. That can't be. The figure stepped into the light, and my world shattered. It was my father. Alive. Or at least, something wearing his face. He looked exactly as he had in the Polaroids, young, strong, but his eyes, they were all wrong. Too dark. Too still. "Hello, son," he said, voice warm, like nothing had ever happened. Greg took a step back. "You're dead. I buried you." "I know," the thing said. "And I thank you for it. But now, it's time I came home." I backed away. "You're not him." "No," it agreed. "But I was. Before he let me in. Before you were born." Greg turned to me. "That's the real reason your dad died. He didn't just make the deal, he became the vessel. He kept it inside himself for years. But when you were born, it moved to you." I shook my head. "No. This is insane." Stormy reared again, whinnying violently. She charged forward between us and the imposter, planting herself like a shield. The thing that looked like my father frowned. "She still serves the old bond." "That's inconvenient." Greg raised the branding iron again. "I'll seal it again, just like before." The thing turned to him. "You used to understand. We saved him, Greg. We saved your family. I spared your brother's life. All I asked for was time." Greg yelled, swinging the iron. The thing caught it in midair. It didn't flinch. The iron melted in its grip. Greg screamed in pain, falling to the ground. I rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders. "Greg! Stay with me." He looked at me, sweat beating down his face. "You have to choose now. Stormy can't hold it forever. You either bind it again, or become it." "How?" I shouted. "There's one more box," he whispered. "Behind the feed silo. Your dad left it for this moment." I turned to run, but the thing was already blocking the way. "You don't want that box," it said softly. "You want the truth. You want to remember." It reached toward me, and suddenly, memories hit me like a train. I saw myself, small, no older than 5, in a hospital bed. My father crying. Stormy standing by the window. And a voice, deep and ancient, whispering into my dreams, "Let me help you. Let me live. I will protect you." The voice was inside me all along. I fell to my knees. Stormy nudged my shoulder with her muzzle. Her eyes locked onto mine. And for the first time I saw what she saw, everything. The night my father gave up his body. The ritual. The fire. The creature stepping from the barn into me. And the choice they all made to bury me, beneath lies and sealed memories. Now I remembered. And the creature knew it too. "That's right," it whispered. "You're not the boy you thought you were. You're me. Just younger. Stronger." I looked at Greg. He was pale, barely conscious. "What do I do?" His lips barely moved. "The box. Stormy knows the way." I turned to the mare. She whinnied and trotted off toward the edge of the pasture. The thing didn't follow. It stood still, arms lowered. You're making a mistake. Open that box, and you destroy yourself. All you've known will burn. I ran. Stormy led me around the side of the barn, to an overgrown patch behind the feed silo. Beneath the tangled grass and rusted tools, I saw it, a weathered wooden crate, reinforced with iron bands. I pulled it open. Inside was a single object, a bridle. Worn leather, stitched with silver thread, etched with ancient markings I didn't understand, but recognized. It wasn't for riding. It was for binding. The wind howled as I picked it up. From the front of the barn, I heard the creature shriek again. A deep, guttural sound, not of pain, but anticipation. It knew what I had chosen. I stood there, clutching the bridle, the weight of everything crushing me. My uncle was dying. My father was something else. And inside me was the truth I could no longer ignore. I wasn't here to save Stormy. She was here to save me. But the cost was going to be more than I ever imagined. The bridle pulsed in my hands, warm, humming like it was alive. Stormy stood beside me, her flank pressed against mine, breathing hard. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was waiting, for me to decide. At the barn's entrance, the thing wearing my father's face stepped closer. You don't need her, it said gently. We're already the same. Let go of the lie. Let me in. I looked into its eyes, and for the first time I saw fear. Not mine, his. He wasn't in control anymore. He knew the choice I was about to make. I slid the bridle over Stormy's head. Light exploded from the leather straps, searing into the ground like roots. She cried out, not in pain, but in power, as the seal reconnected. The creature staggered, its form warping, glitching, coming apart at the seams. No, this isn't how it ends. It's not the end, I whispered. It's the return. The bridle tightened, glowing brighter than the sun, and Stormy charged. When she struck the creature, it shattered, not into pieces, but into memories. Echoes. Screams. My father's voice, Greg's pain, the truth behind everything. The entity dissolved into smoke, pulled back into the earth like it had never existed. Silence fell. Greg collapsed beside the barn, barely breathing. I rushed to him. You did it, he gasped. No, I said, staring at Stormy, who stood still, her chest heaving. We did. And then, just as I reached for him, Stormy let out one final cry, and vanished. Into light. Gone. She had given everything to save me. But I couldn't shake the feeling, something else had stayed behind. Days later, I stood by the barn alone. Everything was quiet now, no shadows, no voices in my head, just whine through the grass and the ache in my chest. Stormy was gone, but what she left behind was peace. Greg survived, though the burns on his hands would scar. He doesn't talk much anymore, but we sit together sometimes, watching the field. We both know she gave more than her life, she gave me freedom. From the thing inside me. From the lies. From fear. I went through every box in the barn, every note Dad left behind. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect his son. I see that now. The thing that wore his face, it twisted everything. But it never truly was him. The land feels different now. Lighter. Like it's been cleansed. I'm staying here for a while. Fixing fences. Breathing clean air. Finding my way back to a life that's mine, not one shaped by secrets and shadows. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sometimes, the people who hurt you are also the ones who tried hardest to save you. And sometimes, salvation doesn't look like a miracle. It looks like an old horse, a rusted bridle, and the truth you've been afraid to face.